Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship looking out at the vast darkness of space. The UES Independence was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was his ship, and he loved every metal plate of it. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers and the gentle breathing of his crew. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park sat at her station watching the sensors. She had been doing this job for 5 years, and nothing ever surprised her anymore. Today was different, though. Today the sensors were showing something that made her heart beat faster. "Captain," she said in a calm voice, "we have multiple contacts coming out of hyperspace." Jake walked over to her station and looked at the screen. Small dots were appearing one by one around Earth. First 10 ships, then 20, then 50. The war. Numbers kept growing until the screen showed 300 alien vessels. "Size estimate?" Jake asked. Lisa typed on her keyboard and numbers appeared on the screen. "The largest ship is nearly 10 kilometers long, sir. Our ship is only 200 meters. Commander Ryan Blake was already at his station pulling up tactical information. He had served with Jake for 8 years, and they worked together like a machine. Ryan never panicked and always had the answers Jake needed. "Sir, the ships are arranging themselves in a perfect circle around Earth," Ryan said. "They are keeping exactly the same distance from each other. Very precise formation. The alien ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. They seemed to be made of crystal and light rather than metal. Energy patterns flowed across their hulls like living things. They moved without any visible engines and left no exhaust trails behind them." Communications Officer Emma Watson turned toward Jake. She was young but very good at her job. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission on all frequencies. Should I put it on the main screen?" "Yes, Emma. Let's see what our visitors want." The main screen flickered and then showed the image of an alien being. It was tall and elegant, with features that seemed to be made of living crystal. Its eyes glowed with a soft blue light, and when it spoke, its voice was like music. "Primitive. Species of Sol 3, the alien said. "You are hereby commanded to surrender your pathetic vessels to the glorious Zephyrian Empire. Your crude metal ships are an insult to spacefaring civilizations everywhere." Jake felt his crew tense up around him. Nobody liked being called primitive, especially when they were looking at their own planet surrounded by enemy ships. He kept his face calm, though. Getting angry would not help anyone right now. Lisa looked at her instruments again. "Captain, their sensors are scanning our hull. The computer is analyzing our construction methods. It seems to be laughing at our steel and titanium alloys." The alien continued speaking. "I am Fleet Admiral Kythera of the Zephyrian Third Conquest Fleet. We have conquered 1,000 worlds and their primitive technologies. Your species builds ships like ancient cargo haulers. Surely you jest that these are warships." Ryan was working at his station calculating the enemy fleet strength. "Sir, each of their ships has energy shields that could stop a nuclear weapon. Their hulls appear to be made of some kind of exotic matter that doesn't follow normal physics. Their weapons bend space itself." Jake looked around his bridge at the metal walls and simple controls. Everything was built to last and easy to repair. Human ships were not pretty, but they worked. They had been working for hundreds of years and would keep working for hundreds more. Emma spoke up again. "Sir, the alien admiral is demanding we acknowledge their technological superiority. She wants us to begin immediate surrender proceedings. She is also making comments about our fusion drives." The alien admiral's image filled the screen again. Her crystalline features showed what could only be amusement. "Your engines burn primitive hydrogen. Your hulls are made of metals we stopped using 1,000,000 years ago. Your weapons appear to be simple kinetic projectiles. Do you even have energy?" "Shields?" Jake smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. He touched the button that would send his voice to every person on his ship. "All hands, this is the captain. Looks like we have some visitors who think they know everything about human engineering. Let's show them what a primitive species can do." Around Earth, the human defense fleet was taking positions. 50 ships moved into combat formation. They were not as big as the alien vessels, and they certainly were not as pretty. They looked like what they were: machines built for war by a species that had been fighting wars for thousands of years. The UES Defiance was the flagship of the defense fleet. Admiral Katie Sullivan sat in her command chair surrounded by officers who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. They had always known that someday humanity would meet aliens. They had hoped those aliens would be friendly. They had prepared for the possibility that they would not be. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "the alien fleet commander wants to speak with you directly." "Put her on screen." The crystalline alien appeared again. This time, she looked directly at Admiral Sullivan with those glowing blue eyes. "Admiral, your ships appear to be held together with primitive welding techniques. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles. Your armor is basic metallurgy. Do you seriously intend to fight us with museum pieces?" Katie leaned back in her chair and smiled. The alien had just made a very big mistake. She had assumed that old meant weak. Humans had learned a long time ago that the best technologies were usually the simplest ones. "Museum pieces?" Katie said. "That's funny. Lieutenant Troy Davis, what's our current torpedo load?" "Full complement, ma'am. 300 Mark 7 warheads per ship. 50 ships in the defense fleet." "And remind me, what exactly is a Mark 7 warhead?" Troy grinned. He had been waiting his whole career for a moment like this. 15,000 megatons of pure nuclear fusion, ma'am. Old Earth tech, as they say. The alien admiral's confidence seemed to waver just slightly. Her species had moved beyond nuclear weapons millions of years ago. They used clean energy weapons that were much more civilized. Nuclear weapons were crude and barbaric. Katie continued in the same calm voice. "Lieutenant Commander Scott Thompson, bring up the technical specs on our railguns." Scott's fingers moved across his keyboard with practiced speed. "Gladly, Admiral. We are looking at electromagnetic acceleration to 15% light speed, tungsten core penetrators with kinetic energy equivalent to a small asteroid impact." The alien admiral's glowing eyes had stopped showing amusement. Her subordinates were whispering among themselves in their musical language. Energy shields were designed to stop energy weapons and exotic particles. They were not designed to stop chunks of metal moving at tremendous speed. Katie smiled again. "Perhaps you would like to know about our missile guidance systems. They are run by artificial intelligence computers that can learn and adapt in real time. We call them dumb missiles because they are not as sophisticated as our main AI systems." Admiral Kithara was no longer looking confident. She was beginning to understand that she had made a terrible mistake. 3 hours had passed since the Zephyrian fleet had surrounded Earth completely. Their energy signatures painted space in brilliant colors that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Kithara had grown increasingly impatient with what she saw as human delusions of grandeur. Her tactical officer floated beside her command throne on the bridge of the Eternal Radiance. The ship's interior was made of the same crystalline material as its hull. Everything glowed with soft light and moved without making any sound. "Your Admiral Katie Sullivan refuses to surrender," the tactical officer reported. "She claims their outdated ships pose a threat to our fleet." Kithara's crystalline features shifted in what passed for laughter among her species. For 3,000 years, she had conquered primitive worlds. Never had any species been foolish enough to think their crude technology could match Zephyrian. "Science! Patch me through to their flagship," she commanded. On the UES Defiance, Admiral Sullivan sat calmly in her command chair. Her senior staff surrounded her at their stations. The bridge was cramped compared to the alien ship, but it felt like home. Everything was built by humans for humans. When the alien commander appeared on the main screen, Katie did not even bother to stand up. She had been in the military for 30 years and had learned that respect was earned, not given. "Admiral," Kithara began with her voice full of condescension, "your ships appear to be held together with primitive welding techniques. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles. Your armor is basic metallurgy. Do you seriously intend to fight us? With museum pieces?" Sullivan leaned back in her chair and smiled. She had been waiting for this question. "Museum pieces? That's funny." She turned to her weapons officer. "Lieutenant Troy Davis, what's our current torpedo load?" Troy had been preparing for this moment since the aliens arrived. "Full complement, ma'am. 300 Mark 7 warheads per ship. 50 ships in the defense fleet." "And remind me what exactly is a Mark 7 warhead?" Troy's grin was visible to everyone on the bridge. 15,000 megatons of pure nuclear fusion, ma'am. Old Earth tech, as they say. The Zephyrian admiral's confidence wavered slightly. Her species had moved beyond such crude weapons millions of years ago. They had developed clean energy-based weapons that were much more civilized. Nuclear weapons were barbaric and messy. "Surely you don't intend to use such barbaric weapons," Kythera said. "Barbaric?" Admiral Sullivan interrupted. "Lieutenant Commander Scott Thompson, bring up the technical specs on our railguns." Scott's fingers danced across his console with practiced ease. "Gladly, Admiral. We are looking at electromagnetic acceleration to 15% light speed. Tungsten core penetrators with the kinetic energy equivalent of a small asteroid impact." Kythera's subordinates began whispering among themselves in their musical language. Energy shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and exotic matter. They were not designed to stop primitive kinetic projectiles moving at speeds that approached light itself. "Perhaps you would like to know about our missile guidance systems?" Sullivan continued in the same conversational tone. "They are run by artificially intelligent computers that can learn and adapt in real time. We call them dumb missiles because they are not as sophisticated as our main AI systems." The alien admiral's glowing eyes had stopped showing amusement. She was beginning to realize that these primitive humans might actually pose a threat to her advanced fleet. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UES Independence, Captain Jake Morrison was having a very different conversation with his crew. Chief Engineer Alex Reed stood beside the captain's chair with a tablet full of analysis data. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake announced to his senior staff, "it appears our visitors have spent so long developing fancy technology that they have forgotten the basics. Chief Engineer, what's your assessment of their ships?" Alex scratched his head and looked at the data again. "Well, Captain, they are beautiful, I will give them that. But they are also incredibly complex. I count 17 different types of exotic energy running through their hulls at the same time. One small disruption could cause cascade failures throughout. Their entire ship. And their shields? Designed to deflect energy weapons and exotic particles. But they are basically useless against good old-fashioned kinetic energy. It's like they have never heard of Newton's laws of motion." Navigation Officer Grace Collins looked up from her console where she had been studying the alien formation. "Sir, I have been analyzing their battle positions. They are flying in perfect geometric patterns. Great for intimidation, but terrible for combat maneuvers. No overlapping fields of fire and no mutual support. It's like they have never actually fought anyone before." Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "That's probably exactly right, Grace. When you are the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, you probably don't encounter much resistance." Back on the Defiance, Admiral Sullivan was continuing her explanation to the increasingly worried alien commander. "Our nuclear warheads are not just weapons, Admiral Kythera. They are physics lessons. When 15,000 megatons of hydrogen fuse into helium, the explosion creates a brief tear in space-time itself." Lieutenant Commander Scott Thompson added more technical details. "The fusion reaction produces exotic particles and gamma radiation that can penetrate any known shielding technology. The electromagnetic pulse alone would overload most advanced electronic systems. But the real beauty of our weapons," Admiral Sullivan continued, "is their simplicity. A nuclear warhead has exactly 3 parts: the fissile trigger, the fusion fuel, and the casing. If one part gets damaged, the other parts still work. You cannot say the same about your energy weapons." Admiral Kythera was now looking genuinely concerned. Her ships were marvels of technology, but they were also incredibly complex. Each vessel required constant maintenance by teams of specialists. If anything went wrong, the entire ship could be disabled. "Your ships may be more advanced than ours," Sullivan said, "but advancement is not always an advantage in combat. Complexity creates vulnerabilities. The more sophisticated your technology, the more ways it can fail." Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation from the Independence. "We humans learned a long time ago that the best weapon is the one that works when you need it to work. Our ships may look primitive, but they are built to keep fighting even when everything goes wrong." The alien admiral was beginning to understand that she had seriously underestimated these humans. Their technology might be old, but it was also proven and reliable. More importantly, these humans seemed to understand war in ways that her peaceful empire had forgotten. Admiral Sullivan leaned forward in her chair. "Would you like a demonstration, Admiral? We would be happy to show you exactly how effective our museum pieces can be." Fleet Admiral Kith Ara called an emergency meeting aboard her flagship, the Eternal Radiance. Her senior staff gathered in the crystalline war room, where holographic displays showed tactical information from across the galaxy. The room filled with the musical sounds of Zephyrian voices speaking in worried tones. "Sub-Admiral Vex-High," she addressed her science officer, "explain to me how their primitive kinetic weapons could possibly threaten our energy shields." Vex-High's crystalline features darkened with concern. He had been running computer simulations for the past hour, and the results were disturbing. "Admiral, we have run extensive calculations. Their railgun projectiles carry enough kinetic energy to overload our shield matrices completely. The tungsten penetrators would punch straight through our exotic matter hulls like they were made of air. Impossible. Our hulls are composed of matter that doesn't exist in normal space-time." "Yes, Admiral, but that's exactly the problem. Exotic matter interacts very poorly with high-velocity conventional matter. It's like trying to stop a bullet with a hologram. The exotic matter simply phases out of the way when struck by sufficient kinetic force." Commander Wraith Oz was the fleet's tactical expert and had been studying human weapons technology. She projected new analysis data into the center of the room. "There's more, Admiral. Their nuclear warheads are fusion-based and create localized space-time distortions when they detonate. Our exotic matter hulls would be catastrophically destabilized by such primitive but powerful explosions." The holographic display showed computer models of what would happen when a human nuclear weapon exploded near a Zephyrian ship. The exotic matter hull would ripple and collapse like a soap bubble. The energy patterns that powered their systems would go chaotic and overload. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Independence, Captain Morrison was giving his crew a very different briefing. The human bridge crew gathered around the central tactical display where Chief Engineer Alex Reed was explaining his analysis of the alien ships. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison announced, "it appears our visitors have spent so long developing fancy technology that they have forgotten the basics. Chief Engineer, what's your assessment of their ships?" Alex pulled up detailed scans of the nearest Zephyrian vessel. "Well, Captain, they are beautiful, I will give them that. But they are also incredibly complex beyond belief. I count 17 different types of exotic energy running through their hulls simultaneously. One small disruption could cause cascade failures throughout their entire ship structure. And their shields? Designed to deflect energy weapons and exotic particles. But they are basically useless against good old-fashioned kinetic energy. It's like they have never heard of Newton's laws of motion. An object in motion stays in motion until something stops it." Navigation Officer Grace Collins had been studying the alien fleet formation for hours. "Sir, I have been analyzing their battle positions very carefully. They are flying in perfect geometric patterns that look impressive. Great for intimidation, but terrible for actual combat maneuvers. No overlapping fields of fire and no mutual support between ships. It's like they have never actually fought anyone who could fight back." Captain Morrison nodded thoughtfully as he processed this information. That's probably exactly right, Grace. When you are the most technologically advanced species in the galaxy for millions of years, you probably don't encounter much real resistance. Every enemy just surrenders when they see your superior technology. Back. On the Eternal Radiance, the Zephyrian officers were discovering more disturbing facts about human military capabilities. Sub-Admiral Vexhai had been analyzing human ship construction and found it both primitive and ingenious. Admiral, their ships are built with what they call redundant systems. If one part gets damaged or destroyed, other parts can take over its function. Their technology is designed to keep working even under the worst possible conditions. How is that possible with such crude materials? They use something called modular construction. Each system is independent of the others. When battle damage occurs, they can isolate the damaged sections and reroute power around them. Our ships are much more efficient, but also much more fragile. Commander Rythos added more tactical analysis. Their weapon systems are equally robust, Admiral. Their railguns have no moving parts except for the projectile itself. Their nuclear warheads are so simple that even massive damage to the delivery system won't prevent detonation. The alien officers were beginning to understand that they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Previous conquered species had tried to match Zephyrian technology and failed. The humans seemed to have deliberately chosen a completely different approach to warfare. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Sullivan was continuing her explanation to the increasingly nervous alien commander. The main screen showed Admiral Kithara's crystalline features, which no longer displayed any trace of amusement or confidence. "Admiral," Sullivan said in a conversational tone, "your ships are marvels of engineering, and I genuinely admire them. But they have a fundamental weakness that you may not have considered." What weakness could you possibly identify in technology millions of years more advanced than yours? Complexity. Every system on your ships depends on every other system, working perfectly. If we damage one critical component, your entire vessel becomes helpless. Our ships are designed on a completely different principle. Lieutenant Commander Scott Thompson brought up technical specifications on his console. "Admiral Kithara, our ships are built like living things. If you cut off an arm, the body keeps fighting. If you damage our engines, we can still fire weapons. If you disable our weapons, we can still ram you with the ship itself." Admiral Sullivan leaned forward in her command chair. "We humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Admiral. We have learned that the weapons that win battles are not always the most advanced ones. They are the weapons that keep working. When everything else fails..." Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation from the Independence. "Our missiles don't just carry nuclear warheads, Admiral Kithara. They carry artificial intelligence systems that can think and learn. If you shoot down 90% of our missiles, the remaining 10% will adapt and find new ways to reach their targets." The alien admiral was now visibly shaken. Her glowing eyes had dimmed, and her crystalline features showed what could only be fear. "Surely you don't intend to use such devastating weapons against us?" Admiral Sullivan smiled coldly. "That depends entirely on you, Admiral. We didn't start this fight, but we are certainly prepared to finish it. The question is whether you want to learn about human weapons technology through demonstration or through direct experience." The transmission from the Zephyrian flagship went silent for several long minutes as Admiral Kithara consulted with her staff. When she returned, her confidence had been completely replaced by uncertainty and growing respect for the primitive species that had just threatened her mighty fleet. Admiral Sullivan decided that words alone would not convince the Zephyrian fleet of human military capabilities. She needed to provide a practical demonstration that would show exactly what their primitive weapons could accomplish. She opened a direct channel to the alien flagship where Admiral Kithara waited with growing anxiety. "Admiral Kithara, I understand you are having trouble believing that our museum pieces pose any real threat to your advanced fleet. Would you like a demonstration of our crude technology?" The crystalline alien appeared on the main screen of the Defiance. Her glowing eyes showed curiosity mixed with lingering traces of her earlier condescension. A demonstration? Very well, primitive human. Show us the full extent of your crude technology. We are curious to see what you consider impressive. Sullivan smiled with the cold confidence of someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. I was hoping you would say that, Admiral. She turned to her tactical officer who had been waiting for this moment. Commander Dale Roberts, target that small asteroid at bearing 27 Mark IV. Single railgun shot with a standard anti-ship. Round. Commander Roberts had been in the military for 15 years and had trained for this scenario countless times. His fingers moved across the targeting console with practiced precision. Aye, Admiral. Targeting solution locked and ready. Range to target is 47,000 kilometers. Fire when ready, Commander. The UES Defiance shuddered slightly as its primary railgun discharged. The electromagnetic coils along the ship's spine activated in sequence, creating a magnetic field powerful enough to accelerate a tungsten penetrator to incredible velocity. The projectile shot from the barrel at nearly 50,000 kilometers per second. The tungsten rod crossed the distance to the asteroid in less than 3 seconds. When it struck the 3-kilometer-wide chunk of rock, the impact released energy, equivalent to several large nuclear weapons. The asteroid didn't just break apart or explode. It completely vaporized in a flash of superheated plasma that lit up space for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. The Zephyrian fleet's sophisticated sensors registered readings that seemed impossible. An object moving at 15% of light speed, carrying enough kinetic energy to destroy a small moon. Their computers struggled to process the amount of raw, destructive force they had just witnessed. Impossible, breathed Sub-Admiral Vexhigh from the bridge of the Eternal. Radiance. The energy requirements alone should have overloaded their primitive power systems. How can such crude technology generate that much force? Admiral Kithara stared at the empty space where the asteroid had been moments before. Her crystalline features showed the first real fear she had experienced in centuries of conquest. What kind of power source do these humans use? Admiral Sullivan's voice came through the communication channel again with the same calm, conversational tone. Oh, that was just our standard anti-ship round, Admiral. Nothing special about it. Would you like to see what happens when we use the bunker busters? Before Kithara could respond, another human ship moved into position. The UES Resilience under Captain Pete Morgan had been waiting for its turn to demonstrate human weapons technology. Captain Morgan was a quiet man who preferred to let his actions speak louder than his words. Admiral Sullivan, with your permission, I would like to show our guests what we originally designed for asteroid mining operations. Permission granted, Captain. Fire when ready. The Resilience fired a different type of projectile from its rail gun system. This round was slower than the first, moving at only 10% of light speed, but it was significantly larger and carried a very different type of warhead. When it struck another nearby asteroid, the results were even more spectacular than the first demonstration. The rock didn't just vaporize like the first target. Instead, it seemed to briefly implode before exploding outward in a carefully controlled pattern. Chunks of debris flew away from the impact point in perfectly straight lines, as if the asteroid had been taken apart by invisible hands. What in the name of the void was that? Admiral Kithara demanded. Her voice had lost all traces of its earlier musical quality and now carried the sharp edge of genuine alarm. Captain Morgan's image appeared on the transmission alongside Admiral Sullivan. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. Depleted uranium core with a gravitational compression warhead, Admiral. We originally designed them for breaking up asteroids in mining operations, but they work pretty well on ships too. The Zephyrian tactical officer was frantically running new calculations based on what they had just observed. Admiral, if they have hundreds of such weapons and our shields cannot stop them, then we are facing the potential destruction of our entire fleet. Admiral Sullivan continued the demonstration with obvious satisfaction. And that brings us to our missile systems. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Diane Foster, would you care to explain our torpedo guidance systems to our distinguished guests? Foster was the ship's missile specialist and had been looking forward to this moment. Her image appeared on the transmission screen, showing a young woman with the confident smile of someone who knew her business better than anyone else alive. Certainly, Admiral. Each of our Mark 7 torpedoes contains an artificial intelligence system with processing power equivalent to a small planetary computer network. They can think, learn, adapt, and coordinate with each other in real time. We usually fire them in swarms of 50 to 100 missiles per target. Furthermore, added Commander Blake from the Independence, our missiles are designed to be completely unpredictable. They don't follow standard flight paths or use conventional propulsion methods. Some of them can phase in and out of normal space-time to avoid point defense systems. Admiral Kithara's confidence was now completely shattered. Phase in and out of normal space-time? That should be impossible with such primitive technology. How can you manipulate space-time without exotic matter? We learned a lot from studying quantum mechanics, Blake replied in a casual tone. Turns out, you can do some pretty interesting things when you are not afraid to experiment with dangerous physics. We humans have never been particularly concerned about safety when it comes to weapons development. The demonstration had achieved exactly what Admiral Sullivan had intended. The Zephyrian fleet now understood that they were not facing primitive savages with crude weapons. They were facing a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of destruction, using technologies that the galaxy had forgotten were possible. Admiral Kithara realized that her perfect formation of advanced ships had suddenly become a collection of very expensive targets. The humans had just proven that all of their technological superiority meant nothing against weapons that could destroy matter at the atomic level. Fleet Admiral Kithara found herself in a situation she had never experienced before in her long military career. For the first time, she was seriously considering retreat against what should have been a completely inferior enemy. Her staff had finished their threat assessment, and the results were more sobering than anything she had ever read. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported with a trembling voice, "if the humans engage us with their full arsenal, we estimate 70% fleet casualties within the first 10 minutes of combat. Our projections show complete fleet destruction within 30 minutes. How is this possible? We have 300 ships of the most advanced design in the galaxy against their 50 primitive vessels." "Yes, Admiral, but their weapons are specifically designed to counter advanced civilizations exactly like ours. Their kinetic weapons bypass our energy shields completely. Their nuclear warheads destabilize exotic matter at the molecular level. Their artificial intelligence-guided missiles could overwhelm our point defense systems through sheer numbers and unpredictable attack patterns." Sub-Admiral Vexhai added more disturbing information to the tactical assessment. "Worse yet, Admiral, our ships are too sophisticated for rapid battlefield repairs. A single human torpedo could disable systems throughout an entire vessel due to cascade failures in our integrated networks. Their ships, being more primitive in design, are also much more robust. Individual components can be damaged or destroyed without affecting overall combat capability." The human fleet had taken what appeared to be a casual defensive posture around Earth, rather than the rigid geometric formations that were standard in galactic military doctrine. They had spread out in loose overlapping patterns. This formation maximized their ability to deliver devastating crossfire while minimizing their vulnerability to area effect weapons. Captain Morrison received a priority transmission from Earth Defense Command on his bridge. Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on his communications screen with an expression of calm satisfaction. "Jake, our visitors seem to be reconsidering their aggressive position. I am going to give them one final chance to leave our solar system peacefully before we demonstrate more of our capabilities." "Understood, Admiral. What's the word from the other human colonies and military installations?" "Mars Defense Force is standing by with their new experimental railgun platforms. The Europa Mining Consortium has offered to demonstrate their industrial-grade asteroid crackers. The Titan research station wants to show off their antimatter containment systems that they use for deep space exploration. Morrison whistled softly at the implications. Think that will be enough to convince them, Admiral? I believe it already has, Jake. But we need to make sure they understand the message clearly and take it back to their empire. Admiral Kithara opened a final communication channel to the human fleet. Her earlier arrogance had been completely replaced by something that could only be described as respectful fear mixed with genuine admiration for human ingenuity. Admiral Sullivan, she began with careful diplomatic language. It appears that we may have significantly underestimated your species' military capabilities and technological applications. Your weapon systems are far more effective than our initial analysis suggested. That tends to happen, Admiral, Sullivan replied in the same conversational tone she had used throughout their encounter. When you assume that newer technology is automatically better technology, we humans have a saying that has served us well. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Kinetic weapons work perfectly. Nuclear fusion works reliably. Simple, robust engineering works under any conditions. Your weapons are indeed remarkably effective against our defensive systems. Perhaps we should reconsider our expansion plans into this star system. That would be very wise, Admiral. But before you leave, let me give you some free advice that might save your empire a lot of trouble in the future. The next time you encounter a species that looks primitive by your standards, remember that sometimes the old ways survive because they are the best ways. We have been perfecting the art of killing each other with kinetic weapons for thousands of years. We have gotten very, very good at it. Commander Carter Hill from the UES Courage added his own warning to the conversation. Besides, Admiral, if you think our warships are dangerous, you really don't want to meet our deep space exploration vessels. Those ships are built to survive literally anything the universe can throw at them, including black holes, supernovas, and hostile alien encounters. The Zephyrian fleet began the process of withdrawing from Earth's solar system. Their perfect formations that had looked so impressive and intimidating now appeared more like the hasty retreat of a beaten enemy. The crystalline ships powered up their exotic matter drives and prepared to enter hyperspace. As the alien vessels prepared to leave, Admiral Kithara sent one final transmission to the human fleet. Her voice carried a mixture of respect and genuine fear that had not been there when she first arrived. We will report to the Zephyrian Empire that this star system is completely unsuitable for conquest or colonization. We will recommend that it be classified as a restricted zone and marked as extremely dangerous for any future contact. Admiral Sullivan's smile was visible to everyone on both fleets. That's probably for the best, Admiral. Send our regards to your empire and tell them we appreciate their visit. And remember the lesson you learned here today. Just because something looks simple and primitive doesn't mean it isn't incredibly deadly. As the last Zephyrian ship disappeared into hyperspace with a brilliant flash of exotic energy, Captain Morrison turned to address his crew. The bridge of the Independence was quiet, except for the satisfied breathing of people who had just accomplished something remarkable. Well, people, I think we just taught the entire galaxy an important lesson about human engineering and military philosophy. What's that, sir? Asked Lieutenant Park with obvious curiosity. Never underestimate the effectiveness of a really big chunk of metal moving really, really fast. The human defense fleet remained on high alert patrol around Earth for another full week. But throughout the galaxy, word was already spreading about what had happened in the Sol system. Within months, Earth's solar system had been quietly reclassified in galactic databases from primitive species suitable for easy conquest to technologically dangerous approach with extreme caution. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior technology or advanced science, but through superior application of fundamental physical principles. Sometimes the old ways really were the best ways. The galaxy had learned to respect the species that still believed in the power of simple, effective solutions to complex problems. From that day forward, no alien empire would make the mistake of judging human capabilities by the appearance of their ships or the age of their technology.